President Cyril Ramaphosa is embarking on a working visit to the U.S. This is from today. The president is due to meet with the U.S. President Donald Trump at the White House in Washington. That's scheduled for Wednesday. Now, it's an effort to reset the bilateral relationship on a number of fronts, including trade and tariffs, geopolitical concerns, and G20 collaboration, after Trump threatened not to travel to South Africa over alleged genocide concerning targeting white Afrikaners. Last week, the Trump administration welcomed 49 Afrikaners it has granted refugee status. To look at this visit and the complications it may encounter, we are joined on the line by the director of the African Center for the Study of the U.S. at Wits University, Dr. Bob Wekesa. Dr. Wekesa, thank you. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you too. I'm happy to be here.
There are very, very high stakes that come with this meeting, as we've seen tensions between South Africa and the United States really reaching incredibly high proportions, and perhaps relations at the lowest point in many, many years. In your view, what awaits the president as he enters into the U.S.?
I think it's a tense moment for the president on various fronts because of the environment under which he is, the relationships are now occurring. And on the one hand, he will be pushing hard against the perception that South Africa is targeting its white population, particularly the Afrikaner population. And of course, this comes in the background of the recent relocation of some 49 or 59 white Afrikaners to various parts of the U.S. So that's one. I mean, the charge, very serious charge of white genocide. South Africa itself had taken Israel, an ally of the U.S., to the ICJ on pretty much the same grounds over Gaza. And I think that is just one core issue on the political end of things. But on the other hand, on the economic front, South Africa actually has a favorable trade balance with the U.S. It exports more to the U.S. than the U.S. exports here. And the tariffs that were hammered on South Africa mean that South Africa might suffer major economic consequences. So I think the president will also be keeping an eye on that. So I'll say it is quite a huge balancing act on the diplomatic, political end, while at the same time trying to ensure that South Africa secures its economic interests with and in the U.S.
Yeah, there's also, of course, awaiting on the other side, the Elon Musk, South African-born American billionaire, incredibly influential over the Trump administration. And it was even until now recently where he has been speaking out against what he believes is genocide against white South Africans, and particularly in the Afrikaans community. He went ahead and has posted, particularly on X, and this is also a very questionable platform because there's been a lot coming out about some of the algorithms and what's been spoken with regard to this narrative that's being spread out there. However, he still wields a lot of influence, and he is the one that has been speaking about blatant racial discrimination against whites through BEE and land reform. To what extent is his influence going to basically drive this entire meeting?
I think his influence cannot be wished away, it cannot be dismissed. Remember that he was one of the key funders, in fact, the top funders of the Trump campaign, leading to the election of the president. And subsequent to the inauguration of President Trump, he was put in charge, or he took up the role of creating the Department of Government Efficiency, DOGE, which was responsible for the evisceration or the cutting of aid to South Africa and, of course, the rest of the world, the ending of U.S. aid, and so forth. So what he does, he has the president's ear, President Trump's ear. He has his own beef with South Africa because some of his companies, like Starlink, the internet service provider, have not been given a license. I mean, they are not operating in South Africa currently, although they are operating in other African markets. So the South African government has taken the position that Elon Musk's entities, companies, ought to register just like any other. But the U.S. government more broadly thinks that registration of its companies or a favorable, operating environment for its companies is crucial. And Elon Musk is emblematic representative of that. So I think, and of course then he comes from the Afrikaner community, and I want to imagine that he's tapping the sensitivities and the motive issue of Afrikaner interest in the country to push for his economic interests. And so I think managing Elon Musk, one person with huge tentacles in the U.S. system is going to be very important.
Yeah, it certainly is. And I mean, I know we could continue talking on the Musk influence over this and the laws that he's been criticizing, but we must also understand that, you know, there are facts that need to come with this. And I mean, if you can sort of look at it, and if the argument is to be had, and I don't think that President Ramaphosa is going to go in there arguing, but he certainly needs to put the case forward, and he has been. He's been talking to transformation. He's been talking to people that are against the transformation principles and laws that South Africa has in order to rectify things from the past. That's what he's constantly been saying. But are there any legal or statistical basis for the claims that the laws against white South Africans are hampering the country and South Africa, well, white South Africans?
I don't think I've seen any statistics, and you can be certain I research and work in this area, Africa, U.S., South Africa, U.S. relations. These claims, of course, happened, they started off in 2017 when organizations such as AfriForum and Solidarity, which are Afrikaner, rights and so forth, organizations kind of reached out to the U.S. through channels such as Fox to claim that there was a particular targeting of a segment of the population called the Afrikaner community. I don't think I've seen any statistics. One can perhaps claim that there's general violence and crime in South Africa generally. In fact, if you start going in that direction, you might end up seeing that blacks, Africans, Indians, South Africa is a mix of all races, and none of, most of them have been affected in a general way with the crime. But to say that the government or a political party is targeting the Afrikaner community for extermination and so forth is more of tapping into the white extremist segment of the U.S. population than can be backed up by any statistical, figures.
Yeah, indeed. And also the whole issue about land expropriation, the Expropriation Act, that's also something that's definitely going to be brought up. But I want to move quickly on to another subject, because something that's worrying the world, and certainly that our president is going on in there to discuss as well, is the imposition of trade tariffs on South African goods, particularly vehicles and agricultural products. Also, the issue of AGOA, and if this hangs in the balance. We saw the different ministers that are going along, and we're also, I suppose, interested in the inclusion of John Steenhuisen into this. He's serving as the Minister of Agriculture. Perhaps talk to us about this and, what we're hoping to achieve out of that.
No, I think that is really the core of the visit, because you recall that when this standoff or even shouting match between the U.S. and South Africa started off sometime in late January, the President Cyril Ramaphosa basically said Trump could keep the U.S. and he would keep South Africa. That was the initial reaction to comments about South Africa and action, diplomatic action towards South Africa. But I think voices of reason have come in to say, look, if we lose the U.S. market and South Africa, as you rightly pointed out, automobiles, citrus fruits, other agricultural products, minerals, and so forth, it will be devastating to the South African economy, because this is a key market after China, of course. And so I think all eyes will be on negotiating agreement, or at least rapprochement, to say, no, look, we can still do business together, even if we disagree ideologically on some matters. And as I mentioned, in fact, if we just look at tourism, I think there is no destination in Africa that beats South Africa in terms of Americans looking to travel. And this is a huge source of foreign income for the country. So I suppose the Of course, then I'll just add that South Africa has 600 American companies, many of them multinationals. So that will also be on the table because if these companies founded in the South African environment due to the diplomatic differences, it will also, threaten jobs, revenue, taxes, and so forth.
Yeah. Dr. Wekesa, I know in the interest of time, we've literally got 2 minutes left, and I wanted to talk a little bit about South Africa's foreign policy stance, particularly when it comes to Israel and its stand on the International Criminal Court's actions against Israel. This is also a very big sticking point. I'm not sure our president, is going to reverse any of this. I don't know if you're in agreement as well.
No, in fact, quite interestingly, the U.S. has... in fact, banned the ICJ and ICC specifically, under the Trump administration. And this will be a talking point, but there's a new development that one needs to keep an eye on. Last week, President Trump was in the Gulf. He visited Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and United Arab Emirates. He did not go to Israel. And Trump is looking to strike a deal with Iran, particularly through the Saudis. This suggests that even though it will be on the agenda, Trump seems to be moving away from a hawkish, a very strong position backing Israel. In fact, the Israelis are very unhappy about the recent developments, as we see from media coverage of the developments. So I would say, while it will be on the agenda, it might not really upend or be as big as the charge of white genocide, linked to the Land Expropriation Act, and two, the economic interests. I'll put it that way.
All right. G20, very quickly. Do you think that our president can convince the US president he needs to attend? Because he's already spoken to the fact that it doesn't appear that he wants to come because of some of the policies. Oh, all right. Looks like we lost him. But I can assure you, viewers, we will continue to talk about this. We lost him on that question. But Dr. Wekesa giving us quite a bit ahead of this meeting. As you can see, there is a lot resting on this meeting. But certainly the G20 is one that will come up in discussion. Sorry we didn't get to get Dr. Wekesa's view on that one. But remember, this is also the very first African president that US President Donald Trump is meeting with. So this is quite a big moment for certainly the continent as well, but a lot to discuss.